Welcome everyone. We are joining you, or rather I'm joining you from our studio just outside London with some amazing guests from all over the place to bring you the remainder of an amazing programme. Up next, we are discussing diversity as a mindset, which is being produced in partnership with the BBC's 50/50 project, exploring just how creating inclusive communications can shift cultures. Nina Goswami, the panel chair, will introduce and discuss the 50/50 Equality Project. Now, it's a grassroots initiative that was born in the BBC's London newsroom, and it's now being implemented across 75 organisations in 22 countries. And of course, that's all with one goal: to improve representation so that we can all reflect society better. She's going to be joined by panellists from the BBC and other organisations partnering with the 50/50 project to increase diversity. Just before I hand over to Nina, some housekeeping. Please switch off your phones. If you lose connection, just try to log in again through that same link. And of course, if you want to contribute, and we hope that you do, to the discussion, there is a Q&A area on your screen where you can add your questions. And of course, the moderator will see these live and bring them over to the panelists. Nina, all that remains for me to say is over to you. I'm very much looking forward to hearing the discussion.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the fantastic intro. I've stolen a couple of my lines there, which is great. Yeah, thank you to Athena40 for hosting us today. Yeah, I'm Nina Goswami. I work for the BBC. I'm the creative diversity lead, and I am in charge of the 50/50 project. And what I'm going to do is firstly introduce our panelists, if they would like to pop up. Leisha, are you there? Hey, Leisha. So Leisha Santorelli is the editor for BBC Business's Marketplace. And you're one of the early adopters for us.
I am. I was very excited to see the 50/50 project being launched. And so I naturally find myself drawn to diversity and inclusion initiatives. And so it's been a really interesting journey from when we first started to where we are now.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And I apologise if my light has just gone off. I'm sitting in New Broadcasting House in one of our little mini pods, and they have light saving mechanisms. So I need to move around to get the lights to keep coming back on again. Let me introduce John Cronin from Lansons, one of our first external partners who joined 50/50. Hi, John.
Hi, Nina. Great to see you.
Great to see you. So, head of broadcast at Lansons. So you can tell us a bit about that and how you're implementing 50/50 in a bit, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. And our final panelist is Laeticia Lynn from PwC and one of our first corporate partners to 50/50. So your experiences are quite early on in the process for us at the moment, aren't they, Laeticia?
They are, but already actually making real inroads.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing all your stories. But before that, I'm just going to quickly, if I can, share some slides with you all. Just to give you a quick flavour of how 50/50 kind of came about. So now we're called 50/50 the Equality Project, but when we started, we were just the 50/50 Project. And we started in the heart of the London newsroom with one programme, Outside Source, and its presenter, Ros Atkins. We had this thing at the BBC where we always talked about how we wanted to increase women's representation, but we were in this kind of place of constant state of trying. So Ros just got to a point where he went, right, let's do something about this. And what he did was he made his team, well, use them as guinea pigs, count the number of men, number of women on their show to see if they could reach 50% women over a month period. They started at under 40 and it took them a few months to reach that 50%. But they use 3 core principles at the heart of that to do that. We collect data to affect change, so we use it every day, identifying gaps in our content. Where could we improved in terms of our representation? We measure what we control. That's really important because we as teams, as content makers, don't always have that opportunity. So, good example. The British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. We can't control that he's our Prime Minister, but we can control that it was Theresa May before him. So we take that person out of our count, but we do count the political commentators or the case studies around that. And the most important golden rule is that we never compromise on quality. So I'm going to be interested to hear what Leisha's reaction will be to that, and whether that's something that her team were able to do through 50/50. So outside source, as I say, they proved the model, and now we are 600 teams, more than 600 teams, 3 years on across the BBC, not just in news, but we have orchestras, we have drama, lots of different output. Anywhere that you can monitor men and women, we're doing it now. And this is the result. March 2020 was our challenge month. It was actually the month that we all obviously went into lockdown as a result of the coronavirus. So we moved to critical services. So you can see the numbers who were able to participate had gone down slightly, but 2/3 of them had reached 50% women, and that was up 1/3 on when they first joined the project. And when we compare that to the previous year's challenge month, which was in April 2019, we can see that there was an increase of 9 percentage points. So for me, that's really positive. You know, we were in this moment where, you know, there was so much flux happening. How are we even going to put content on air? And we were still able to move that dial. And what I love to do is look at it over a 2-year period. Every 6 months, you see 50% women, that you're seeing that incremental increase across the board. And for me, that shows that there is something changing in our content makers' mindset. And that's obviously what we're here to talk about. They're using that data, they're using it to see where the gaps are, where are the areas that they can improve their content, whether it's just increasing women representation or enriching their storytelling by finding new stories. So that's a really exciting thing to see. And our audiences are noticing it. This was a survey of just over 2,000 BBC online users. So that's BBC News Online, BBC iPlayer, BBC Sounds. And my favorite figure on there is the 32%, because that is the number increasing their consumption of BBC content. So if people say that there's no reason for diversity, this is the business case that proves that diversity is important and should be rooted in every business. So, as we heard earlier, 75 partners across 22 countries now involved in 50/50. They're using our monitoring and those core principles for media, communications, business, and universities. And I love the universities bit, because we're trying to get to students at journalism schools and content makers before they enter the workforce, because if they're thinking in a diverse way to start with, then we should expect to see that our communications and our media are starting to represent and reflect society better. So that was a quick trot through everything. You can find out more, lots more, on our website, which is bbc.com/50/50. I'll just leave that up for a couple of seconds. That's my email address, and obviously the team's email address as well. But while I just keep that up for a couple of seconds, our panelists have heard my spiel, let's say, a few times. So I'd be interested now to hear their stories. Leisha, I was talking about how, you know, you're one of the first teams to have joined 50/50 after outside source. So 50/50 1.0. What's your experience been of that?
It's definitely been a journey, because change is never easy, and it always takes time before the fruits of your labor shows itself. The BBC is a huge organization. The business and economics department is one of its largest. And so you have TV, radio, and online. So I sit within the radio teams. And so what I did was that I was really interested in this project. I believed in the vision. I know Ross, I know Nina. And I said, okay, we had the conversations about how to adopt it. No one wanted to do the actual daily tracking. So what I had to do was essentially do it myself. So I found that was the most effective way of getting people to become interested and to adopt the 50/50 project, is to demonstrate the leadership in that area and to explain to people why it was important. And within business, it was such a mission critical thing for us as well to reflect our audiences, given business tends to have always been a mostly male dominated sector. And so we wanted to be able to bring female voices to the table, because they do exist, and it just required a lot more legwork in finding them in different areas and different industries.
So we talk about 50-50 being simple. The monitoring bit is the simple bit. But once you've identified that gap, then there is a bit of work, obviously, to do from what you're saying there.
Absolutely. So, for example, within the radio department, you've got programs ranging from short ones, 8 minutes in duration, to ones that over an hour, for example. And so, the journalists work under different deadlines and different pressures. And sometimes they just don't have the capacity to be able to look that extra or go that extra mile to find someone. And so what really helped was that the 50-50 project actually started compiling lists and sharing information where people could have a quick reference point if they were under that time constraint. So that was really helpful at the beginning.
Well, John, if Leisha was piloting 1.0, I would say that you were doing 2.0 version of 50-50, moving it from the BBC, from broadcasting to marketing and PR. What kind of things changed in terms of how you do 50-50? Was it the same, or what does it look like for PR?
Well, it's so interesting because we've adapted in many ways, because we're the same but we're not. We're involved in media and we're involved in representation, but it's a slightly different position that we're in. And the reason for that is that an agency like Lansons, we're a reputation management agency, we're based in London and New York. We make content, we write, we organize events, we invite people to events, we make stuff like a newsroom. That's one of the things that I enjoyed the most about coming over to Lansons and leaving the BBC, where I used to work. It felt like the newsroom in many ways. But at the same time, we advise people that want to speak to journalists, that want to engage, that at times want to defend their line, whatever it might be, but nevertheless are involved and want to be spokespeople. So we were and are involved for essentially two reasons. One, because of what we are as a company, and what it means to us, and secondly, because it's vitally important to the people that we represent, the people that keep our business going, our clients, the people that we talk to and look after. For Lansons, it's in many respects, it's all about what we are as a business, the 50-50 project. We're 30 years old, we're a partnership, and issues around diversity, inclusion, and gender equality have been at the core of what we are as an organization for those 30 years. And that's because the people at the very top, the people who started our business, have a passion for it and believe in it passionately, and fed that into the organization as for what we are. So this isn't gesture for us. It's a core to what we are. We're a 2/3 female organization. The majority of our management team is female, and the most important people at the top of the business are one female, one male. So it rings true for what we are. It's simply the right thing to do. But for clients, and when we talk to clients, it's also vitally important. They want to get on the 10 o'clock news. They want to get on the Today program. They want to be on the breakfast sofa. They want to talk to the FT, the Mail. And Leisha, I know Marketplace well, that you're referring to as well. They're clients who want to get onto programs like that. And part of the exercise for us, and I deal a lot in broadcast, is to encourage and explain to clients that the landscape is shifting, and that if they don't move with it in a positive and proactive way, they're going to get left behind, and that's the right thing. If they want to engage, it's not good enough to say to the guest booker on the Today program, I've only got a male commentator because that's the person I could get. That's not good enough. And we need to and do encourage our clients to see that view as well. So we're helping them, and of course there's mutual self-interest for them. They want to speak to you. We're helping them to understand how things have changed. So I guess to cap it, it's about who we are as an organization and meaningfully and presenting what that means for our clients as well.
So you're kind of taking a slightly kind of maybe two-pronged approach then. So you're monitoring internally, aren't you, for your events and what you're doing in your own kind of internal comms, is that right? And then also advising your clients themselves about 50-50.
Absolutely, 100%. So we, as a reputation business, we know that if we're telling our clients and if we're telling you, others in the media, this is what people should be doing, we have to be doing it ourselves, because the alternative is simply not good enough, and it's hypocritical, and it's also a reputational risk. But absolutely, we monitor what we do, and what's been so interesting is it's in many respects it's been a voyage of discovery for us, because we have a view as a business, but when you're dealing with quantitative data that the 50/50 project encourages, it tells you something at times that you might not have expected. And most importantly, and I think this comes across the experience that we've had when talking to the BBC and other organizations, it helps you learn how to change. So what excites me about the 50/50 project is this isn't just a gesture. This is the tools and the means for you to actually affect proper change. And that's what matters to us. And that's the journey that we're.
Thanks, John. And Laeticia, I think that lead by example thought is quite interesting, isn't it? And when we're looking at the corporate area, we've tailored what 50/50 looks like. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how it works with PwC?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything. I'd echo everything what John was saying. I suppose we're on the corporate side. So for us as a big professional services firm, we like to see ourselves as we are a progressive employer. How we're seen and portrayed by the media is really important to us, and really important to our reputation, really important to our ability to attract new recruits and a more diverse set of recruits. And while we've been making really good progress in terms of improving the diversity of our business, when it comes to kind of new entrants, it's pretty much a 50/50 split now. That hasn't been reflected in our media coverage, for example, where typically our spokespeople have been more senior members of the firm, and those are typically often men, because actually we don't have the equal kind of split at senior levels, although we're heading in the right direction there. So there's this bit of a disconnect between our media coverage and I guess the sort of the firm we are. Our eyes kind of lit up when we kind of, we heard about 50/50, because it had that kind of means to deliver exactly what we wanted to do. We focused on kind of external media coverage, although we're looking at internal comms events too. And we actually kind of bit the bullet, and we went for those areas of the business that actually were the most male dominated. So we've started with our economics practice, where we've had, historically we've had two very senior, sort of eminent male economists kind of leading our profile and doing a fantastic job on that. And we thought, actually, well, this is a really kind of hard nut to crack, but let's start there. Likewise, financial services, our sort of sector specialists, that industry, again, you could imagine typically more male, but we thought, well, let's start with the challenging areas, because they're actually the areas where we really need to make a difference, and let's give it a shot and see if it works. And I have to say, I've been really pleasantly surprised with the progress we've made in quite a short space of time. Initially, our stats made quite kind of dismal reading, 80/20 kind of split, but over time we started nudging it in the right direction, and with a few months we'd actually kind of hit 50/50, which was really surprising. I mean, we've got to keep working at it, and there have been some months subsequently where we've kind of it's flipped back the other way, but we're definitely moving in the right direction now.
No, it's fantastic to hear. I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's not something that that you can just you hit 50 and go, we've done it. It's just having to sustain it, and we find that in the BBC definitely, and I'm sure you're finding the same thing at Lansons, because I think you've hit 50 a couple of times when it comes to events, if I'm right, John.
That's right, Nina. Yeah, we like the BBC and like other organisations, the FT Barons and others. What we do is take a view as to what we can control, what we have an editorial control over. So that's events, and that's our website, the way that website looks, the blogs that we put out, and how we make ourselves seen. And gratifyingly, when it comes to events, our figures are actually, they're not quite 50/50 actually. It's 55% female to 45% male, which is a good thing. I know it's not 50/50 and we shouldn't say that, but the balance needs addressing. It's a good thing. And that's something we control. It's the people that we have on events like this. It's the people that we have a say in on events that we once before COVID-19 held at Lansons and elsewhere, or on webinar, but we're essentially in editorial control. But I'll be very honest with you, we've got some work to go yet as well. Laeticia's point around the figures that you're seeing at PwC, we're encountering that at Lansons as well, and for blogs and for pieces of writing that we push out as an agency, the figures aren't as strong. They currently sit at 73% male to 23% female. Now, this isn't an organization that is majority female, so it raises all sorts of interesting questions about attitude, behavior, outlook, and so on, about inbuilt assumptions that maybe come right down to who we are as individuals. But most importantly, if we weren't monitoring this, we wouldn't really know it for sure. And it gives us an opportunity to do something about that, to engage. And of course, Nina, you've spoken to us at Lansons and in recent past, and other colleagues from BBC as well. So it gives us the tools to work with. But we know as a business, and we're very honest about it and open, that we have work to do. We as a business, we don't have a gender pay gap, but when it comes to a voice, we do. And we need to make something different in order to deal with that particular issue.
And Leisha, how about you? How's it, are there kind of areas of challenge, of pushback that you find for marketplace and content making?
In the early days, I definitely found resistance among colleagues and even among some senior leadership, because they thought that it was creating additional work. But I made the argument that this can be incorporated into workflow, where it becomes almost like second nature, and that takes time. Another thing that's made it quite challenging was coronavirus. This year in particular, people going that extra mile when they are already under so much duress has been challenging as well. So I would say that, it can sometimes feel like in fits and starts, but the data ultimately over trend line, which you showed in your presentation earlier, is really interesting, because you can then identify areas where you just need to focus on to improve. So for example, with one of our flagship radio business programs, we saw that the reason why the percentage was so low is because the market scarce were always male. And it was an easy fix. We just needed to balance it out a bit more. And so I think as time progressed, people come to the understanding more readily in the course of time.
Yeah, and actually, I think in the BBC we've started to get a little bit more sophisticated as well with our monitoring. We haven't, obviously, as we're discussing here, cracked women's representation. We're way off that, but we've seen the improvement on that, and so now we're trying to replicate that success for disability and ethnicity as well. So, so again, that kind of adding more kind of mindset, thought, bringing it to the fore. And Laeticia, you've talked about the need to sustain, but is there any other particular challenge that you seem to be finding when it comes to increasing women's representation?
I guess initially, I was probably more of the naysayer, in the sense I thought this is going to be really hard to do because most of our spokespeople at that level are men. In the economics team, our economists were men. So I thought it would be interesting just to see how that manifests itself in the coverage, but I thought it could be quite hard to shift. But I suppose what's been interesting is how it has shifted the way we do things. So it has forced us to train up more junior people and to cast the net more broadly, and just to think differently, and that, so it's not just improving, I suppose, the gender diversity of our coverage, but that kind of demographic coverage as well. And I think it's making our voice much more interesting as a result. I suppose the other point I'd make is that actually it actually landed much better with the people I thought would take some convincing. And actually our economists, for example, they kind of got it immediately. Instead of seeing it as a means that could diminish their profile, they realized they could get a kind of a bigger slice of the pie, because actually media would be more interested in hearing from us and more likely to come to us if they recognized we had a kind of broader range of spokespeople. So yeah, that's been encouraging.
That's great. I think that's probably yourselves and actually Lansons are probably the only two companies that's actually happened in, which is fabulous. We've had a couple of questions actually, not 50-50 related, so I'm going to throw them out there, and if you just stick your hand up and tell me if you want to answer them or not, that would be great. Leisha, you mentioned the pandemic. One question here is, do we think that the pandemic has disproportionately affected women and the ability to work from home, having to juggle work and family life. And do we think that that's creating a gender gap during COVID-19? Leisha, do you want to try for that one?
Wow, that's a tough one. I also have a couple of friends who are on maternity leave, and coronavirus has been incredibly tough on them. I do think that there has been an impact on availability of female guests, given that many had to resort to homeschooling their children if they were parents, and picking up extra loads on top of their day jobs. And so I think there definitely has been an impact, but I think that the longer term trend is there that they are aware that that there's a greater push for more diversity in terms of gender and other areas. And I'm also noticing more women coming forward to propose themselves as possible spokespeople if they have the capacity.
And how about Laeticia, how has it been for you? Are you finding that it's more difficult to find women spokespeople in the business as a result?
Actually, I have to say I haven't noticed that kind of so much here. If anything, I suppose I have noticed we've probably had more opportunity to comment, perhaps because media outlets are finding it harder. So I suppose there's been an opportunity for sort of more people to get involved.
That's quite interesting. And John, how about Lansons? What's the kind of the COVID effect been for you?
Well, I mean, I have to sort of chime with what Laeticia was saying, actually. I think that, I mean, it's a really interesting question. And I think that in many respects, it's affected us all. And I think that most likely, and I don't have data on this, it's probably disproportionately hit female employees and mothers at home. And I'm a father of 3 girls, and my wife will definitely say that she's doing more than me at home, despite all my best efforts. I'm sure that she is absolutely right. And I think, but in seriousness, I think it does and can have an impact. I don't have data on that. What we do as a business and what we try to do as a business is what we do in everything, not view it from the views of what's best for one person, but what's best across the board for everybody. So yes, I think that it's going to be difficult for mothers in particular, just because of the ingrained attitudes that we still have as a society. But projects like this, and I think and addressing issues like this is part of the way that we can change that. In the same way as I think the first of those 2 questions as well, on the senior management roles as well, is still a long way to go for that. And as a business, as an organization, Lansons is involved in pushing for that. We work with the Diversity Project, which is led by Dame Helena Morrissey, looking for the 33% of women on boards on FTSE 100 companies. We're not there yet. We're quite some way off, but it's important to keep pushing. It's an incremental change ultimately that's going to get us there, but it won't happen unless there's evidence and a desire and a push from us all.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so that for those who are on the call, the question that John is talking about is globally, women in senior management roles is just 29%. So isn't there still a way to go, and what needs to be done? So yeah, absolutely. There's a massive way to go, isn't there? And I think, Laeticia, you mentioned about kind of training up junior members, and I think as they get more visible, then they get seen and they may get promoted, and that's part of the beauty of kind of making sure that our society is reflected on our content, because that visibility can turn into that career path that you're looking for. But a long way to go, as they say. We've only got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to do a quick kind of quick fire round, so to speak, to end with, if that's okay. Each of you, I would like to know what your top tip is for creating diversity in content or in your organization. So Leisha, go for it, 30 seconds.
I would say that one of the biggest things to promote diversity and inclusion initiatives is to communicate, and be prepared to deal with uncomfortable conversations, and to be able to adopt more neutral language and active listening skills, because that is what will push the change over the threshold.
Fantastic. John, your 30 seconds.
Yeah, heartily agree with Leisha there as well. And I'd say for us, it's that, and it's definitely one about collaboration as well. This is something that we don't impose on somebody. This is something that belongs to us all. So as an organization, everyone has a stake in this as well. And that involves, just as Leisha says, you know, some tough conversations at times, but this is about making it belong to everybody. And that's the mission that we're on at Lansons, because it just makes sense and it's the right thing to do.
Fantastic. And final word, Laeticia, 30 seconds.
I would say don't be put off by the scale of the challenge. I think it's easy to come up with a list of all the reasons why this will be really tough and why you can't do it. But if you just kind of bite the bullet, you'll be surprised by the results.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for your time, especially in lunch break, UK and Europe time. So much appreciated. I hope that's been useful for those who are listening in, and please do get in touch. We are looking to collaborate, as John says, across the 50/50 global network. And we would love you to join us in our mission to improve representation across the media and communications. So thank you all and enjoy your next session.